Animals sense what we can't, you know what I mean? Sometimes I think they're smarter than us, at least when it comes to danger. I'll never forget how it all started with 30 chickens flat out refusing to cross a dusty path right in the middle of my own ranch, 2 weeks of stubborn, squawking protest like they were guarding some invisible line drawn in the dirt. I'd just inherited this stretch of land after my brother Frank passed not 6 weeks before, and I thought I'd seen everything a flock could pull, but those birds, they were sending a message loud and clear. The path didn't look like anything special, just a bare 8-foot wide strip running straight from my yard out toward an old sagging storage shed. But no grass, no weeds, not even a stubborn dandelion grew there, and for late spring in our part of the country, that's plain weird. Every place else was wildflowers and knee-high grass, but this spot was dead as the moon. I'm standing there scratching my head, and my daughter Mabel comes out, towel in hand, rolling her eyes at me like I'm the crazy one for watching chickens instead of fixing the well. She'd driven in from town supposedly to help with the estate, but I think she was mostly running from a busted-up love story she wasn't ready to talk about. Still on chicken patrol, Dad, she teased, but when she looked at the ground, her brow furrowed. Maybe it's chemicals or something in the soil. I thought of that too. Got down on my knees and sniffed the dirt. Caught a strange whiff, kind of sweet and sharp, like paint and medicine mixed together. It wasn't strong, but it stuck in my nose all day. Didn't smell like anything natural, I'll say that. Right around then, Gideon Nash rolls up, a wiry, stone-faced man who worked for my brother for more than a decade and for Uncle Frank before him. If anyone knew secrets buried on this land, it was Gideon. He had a way of moving slow, careful, like he was measuring each step. Even his horse stayed clear of that patch of ground. As Gideon started on repairs for the shed, I watched him shoot wary glances toward that dirt path, never letting it out of his sight, like he was waiting for something bad to crawl out of the earth. Mabel brought him water at noon, and finally I just asked Gideon, you know why nothing grows on that path? He paused, squinting at the sky, then back down. Your brother ever tell you about the old workshop? I shook my head. Frank never said much about the past. Turns out about 15 years ago, Frank had built a little chemical workshop right there mixing up pesticides and who knows what for all the local ranchers. One night, the building burned to the ground. Frank told everyone it was an accident, blamed the wiring. But Gideon's face told a different story. He said the fire burned too hot and too fast for just wood. They'd stored arsenic mercury, things so nasty they'd been outlawed for decades. After the fire, Frank had Gideon help scrape up what they could, then dumped fresh dirt over the worst of it like that would fix anything. You can't just bury poison and hope it goes away, Gideon said, and I felt a cold shiver even under the blazing sun. Later, when the wind picked up, that chemical tang came drifting through again, and I couldn't get it out of my mind, especially with just 50 yards away. I spent that night staring at the ceiling, listening for every creak, every groan from the yard. If there were still containers buried down there, maybe rusting, leaking into the ground. What did that mean for us? For our water, our neighbors? Mabel found me at the window, eyes bleary. We have to dig it up, Dad. If we don't, who will? She said. I knew she was right, but fear, the kind that clings to your bones, had me weighing the risks. What if we dug up something so bad the government came in, condemned the whole place? I'd lose everything I'd just inherited. But how could I risk doing nothing? What if those chemicals were poisoning the water for every family downstream? My brother wasn't the only one who might have made a mess. He'd sold stuff all over the county. That next morning, Gideon came by looking like he hadn't slept a wink either. Before we got started, he pulled me aside and told me something that turned my stomach. Frank wasn't just selling to folks around here. He had buyers in 3 counties, some of them using the chemicals for illegal gold processing stuff that could poison a river faster than you can spit. Mabel showed up with shovels, stubborn as ever. We started digging at that path while the chickens watched from a safe distance. The dirt was oily black and the chemical stink just got stronger the deeper we went. About 2 feet down, I hit something solid. Turned out it was a wooden crate, heavy and banded with iron, no markings but sealed up tight. Not the kind of thing you store chemicals in, according to Gideon. We got the lid off after some work, and inside we found bundles of documents, glass vials wrapped in oilcloth, and ledgers page after page in Frank's handwriting. But these weren't just records of pesticide sales. They were blueprints for environmental disaster, mercury amalgams for Johnson Mining, cyanide for Black Rock Creek, contracts with signatures, altered government inspection reports. Frank had falsified documents for illegal operations and kept samples like he was building his own insurance policy. I felt sick holding those ledgers. Mabel picked up a vial reading, "Concentrated mercury, do not test." It hit me. My brother hadn't just poisoned this land, he'd helped others do it too. If I turned all this over, a lot of innocent folks could lose their farms. But if I didn't, people would keep getting hurt. Before I could even process what to do, 3 riders appeared in a cloud of dust, pulling up like they owned the place. The leader was a slick-looking man named Harlan Briggs, said he represented business interests that had dealings with Frank. The way his men watched Mabel and Gideon, fist-balled and guns obvious, told me these weren't the kind of folks you say no to. Briggs wanted the records plain and simple. Offered me $5,000 to hand it all over and forget I'd ever seen it. Said bad things happened to people who made trouble for his clients. You ever notice how threats sound almost polite coming from men like that? Gideon moved a little closer to me, his hand near his belt. I told Briggs I needed to think on it. He said he'd be back tomorrow. That night, none of us slept. I pored over those ledgers, reading letters from miners whose kids got sick notes from Frank promising to keep quiet for a price. I realized it wasn't just my family at risk. It was hundreds, maybe thousands. In the morning, Gideon confessed Frank had tried to walk away from all this once. Within a month, his barn burned, his well went bad, and someone shot his prize bull. Briggs and his people sent their message clear: once you're in for life. Mabel was the one who saw a way out. What if we don't hide the evidence, she said. What if we make it clear that if anything happens to us, those records go straight to the authorities? I hesitated, but it was a good plan. Dangerous, but better than just waiting for the hammer to fall. We copied the most damning pages, then stashed the crate deep in the root cellar. When Briggs and his men rode back, I met them on the porch with a ledger in my hand. "I have a counteroffer," I said loud enough for everyone to hear. "This book proves Black Rock Creek knowingly poisoned a river to save money. I sent copies to the territorial marshal this morning with a letter explaining that if anything happens to my family or this ranch, the whole operation gets blown wide open." Briggs lost his cool, face went pale, hand moved to his gun, but he saw Mabel in the window with my old rifle and Gideon at my side. He backed down, but not before promising, "This isn't over." "Yeah, it is," I told him, and I meant it. 3 days later, the marshal showed up with investigators. 7 illegal mines shut down, a dozen men arrested, including Briggs. The families who'd suffered got compensated, though nothing makes up for poisoned water. I used my share to clean up the land. Within 2 years, wildflowers grew where nothing had before, and the chickens never hesitated again. Mabel stayed to help her run things. Turned out she liked honest ranch work better than anything in town. Gideon finally got some peace, and me, well, I sleep a little better knowing I did what Frank never could. But sometimes looking out at that patch of green, I wonder if I had the right to decide for everyone, or if I just lit a fuse that's still burning under this whole county. So what about you? Would you turn in the evidence and risk wrecking families, or keep the secret and let the land suffer? Tell me in the comments, because justice out here isn't always black and white. And sometimes the hardest line you ever draw is the one in your own backyard.